That card looks crazy. It does look like Toon support though, which is a little scary. I'm already scared of the Toon deck a little bit. But you guys said it's a generic card. Wait, hold up. Where's the translation? Mind Force. Normal trap. If your opponent controls 5 or more face-up cards, you can activate this card the turn it is set. Ooh, also this card's activation and effect cannot be negated. Wait, this is like the dream wording for a going second help card that's also usable going first. Hold up. When any of the following occurs, negate the effects of all face-up cards your opponent controls, and if you do, destroy those cards. Also, monsters you control cannot attack directly until the end of the next turn. When the monster your opponent controls with the highest attack declares an attack, when your opponent activates a monster effect that includes an effect to destroy a card on the field, when your opponent activates a monster effect in the hand or field during your turn. Oh. Oh. So what you're saying is... Oh, this card is interesting. Oh, this card is interesting. There's so many layers to this card. There's so many layers to this card. This is awesome. First of all, take the translation with a grain of salt, because this card was just released. There's a possibility that one or the other wording is incorrect, but this is a very, very interesting card. Okay, so this is not... It's not going to be, like, playable in every single format or against every single deck. Because if we think about this... Just let's take a step back for a second before we overreact to this, okay? 5 face-up cards is something that is a lot. That is a lot, and a lot of top-tier Yu-Gi-Oh decks at the moment don't actually end on 5 face-up cards. Cool Tune does not have 5 face-up cards. Draco Tail did not have 5 face-up cards. What else is there? Radiant Typhoon doesn't have 5 face-up cards. Like, there's a lot of decks that don't end on 5 face-up cards. Because a lot of the decks these days have, like, layered interruption from the back row and stuff like that. Branded does? No. I don't think it does, no. Branded does not end on 5 face-up cards usually. Branded has like a Quem, Cartesia, Ecclesia, and the rest is face down. Like there's usually not 5 monsters on a branded board. However, this is the kind of card that will punish like combo decks really, really hard, potentially, right? Like this card would have gone incredibly hard during the COVID era of Yu-Gi-Oh, right? And there are examples for this. There are examples. This punishes like the slop decks, you know, the Mitsurugi Yami potentially, right? The whatever, those kind of decks, right? Elf notes and stuff. Here's the thing. This card, there's so much more to this card once we start thinking about it like past the surface level, right? Because this card existing already forces people to play the game differently, right? It kind of has like this Nibiru effect on the game where even if the card isn't even necessarily in your hand or not even necessarily in your deck, it can change how your opponent approaches playing the game when they go first, right? This could force combo decks in the future to end on less monsters than they could, maybe. It may be like how people sometimes play a different line because Nibiru exists. People might play a different line because this card exists, right? They might choose to end on a smaller board with less face-up cards because this card is in the game. Or they might be forced to have like a form of spell trap removal in the game on their end board that they can use if you set a card. Like if you set a card now, any spell, any trap that you draw going second, you can use as a bluff to be Mind Force, right? Maybe it's Mind Force, and there you go. Still better going first than going second. I highly disagree. This card is not good with... This card is not that good going first, which is ideal, honestly. Because when you go first, this card is just broken when you go... How is this card broken when you go first? Do we have to practice reading right now? Do we have to start? Do we start with the alphabet? Or where do we start? Before we doom post about this card. Are you familiar with the letters of the alphabet, chat? Or like I'm just trying to evaluate how far back we need to start for this explanation. Okay, first of all, when the opponent's monster with the highest attack declares an attack is irrelevant. pretty much. It's going to come up very rarely, but sometimes, you know, but it's easy to play around. You can get rid of it beforehand. It's not that hard. When your opponent activates a monster effect that includes an effect to destroy a card in the field is honestly relatively specific. There's no deck in the format right now that does this without the ability to chain block it. Like, you're going to say shit like Murakumo or Cool Tune Mix, Cool Tune Recode, always going to be chain blocked. Not going to be able to respond to that with that. And then the last one, when your opponent activates a monster effect in hand or field during your turn, is completely unusable going first. So literally, this card is unironically pretty bad going first. This is actually, in my opinion, the downside of this card, is that when you go first, it is borderline unusable and not good enough. As a result, it's probably only going to see play as a side deck card. That is actually my concern with this card, is that it's only usable going second, really. I think the going first for this card could have been a little bit better even. Because I really like when these cards are main deckable and not just side deck cards only. But that's fine. It's not like a huge complaint, but it would have been cooler if it was main deckable to actually, because this way, essentially, if this card is a side deck only card, the combo decks can still go crazy in game one because no one is expecting this card in the main deck. And then you're like, well, you know, I guess I can just do full combo in game one, and then game two I can play like a little smarter about it. But at the same time, like post side, the combo decks can side some other stuff for going first that are gonna make it easier for them too. So, you know. So for going second, I think this card actually is a wonderful introduction into the game, because as opposed to some other board breakers or other non-engine cards, this card is gonna have impact on the game when you don't even have it. And I think that is good. I think that is good because similar, like, it's basically one of my favorite comparisons on what I mean by this is comparing cards like Droll Lockbird to Nibiru. Like, both of these cards are technically designed or used to keep combo decks in check right now, even though you can argue at how successfully they do that. But Droll Lockbird is like a card that doesn't really change how people play the game. Because, I mean, sometimes it makes it so like, oh yeah, I'm going to use my most important search first, or I'm going to use my quick play spell in the draw phase, but that's not really changing how you play. Not in a meaningful way. But the way you play against Droll Lockbird is usually you just activate your first search, and then you know if it's there or not, right? Cool Tune sometimes plays around it by not activating an effect if they have a good hand, or going Q summoning Rotary, but realistically, they don't really skip on these effects because they still get them all later. It's not really like they're missing out on anything. It's just better because you don't really lose anything from it most of the time. But what I mean is, like, if Droll is not in your opponent's hand, you will know it very quickly, right? You make a search, and then you know whether Droll is there or not, and then you know whether you have to respect it or not, and you can just go full combo anyways, right? Nibiru is different, because Nibiru, you never know if it's there. It could always be looming, and so it changes how people actually structured their combos for a very long time, because Nibiru was a thing. At the moment, it's kind of like declining. It's not as popular anymore, because they just kept making more decks that are good into Nibiru. But the you get what I'm saying, right? There's a mind game happening with Nibiru, which this card also plays into, right? And the fact that this is a trap card board breaker makes it even more bluffable, because you can just start going second. Let's just say I'm going second and my opponent has a big board, and I have a card in hand that would lose if it gets negated. Like if I have one starter, if it gets negated, I lose the game. So what I can do is I can bluff set anything from my hand face down before activating my starter. Now, my opponent has to consider, what if they have Mind Force? What if they have Mind Force? Can I really afford to Ash this starter? Or can I afford to use my RS on this starter, or my Zaylin or whatever, right? Like, can I, if they have 5 face-up cards, of course. In some of these examples, you know, maybe they don't have 5 cards on the board, but just in theory, against a combo deck, this is a potential very, very interesting card, because now you don't even have to draw this card to win some games, essentially, because your opponent might just be scared that you have Mind Force, and so they're gonna let your starter go through, and then you have a chance at winning the game. And I think that is good. My complaints about this and my doubts about this are the following: 5 or more face-up cards. If we look at the current state of the game, I think this would have been very, very good maybe 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, when a lot of decks in the formats did this. Like 5, it doesn't sound that much with, you know, Yu-Gi-Oh! People are always memeing on Yu-Gi-Oh! Of like, oh, everyone summons like 10 negates going first. 5 face-up cards is a lot. That is a lot, and a lot of decks right now, like I said earlier, don't end on that many face-up cards, because most of the time these days, decks have become a little bit more like varied to the point where they can actually end on less, because they have interruptions from hand, they have interruptions face down, they have interruptions from the graveyard. Like most decks don't actually have 5 face-up cards, except for really, really heavy combo decks. So this, I think, for now is going to be like, if this card existed right now, it would never be a main deck card. It would only be a side deck option that you can use if you're scared of some heavier combo decks in the format, like your Doom Z's maybe, like your Power Patrons maybe, like your Elf Nodes, whatever, which is fine by me. I don't think we need a hard counter like this to the quote-unquote fairer decks in the format. You know, I'm pretty happy with the general like direction, with the general directions of a lot of the archetypes in the game right now that are like mid-rangey, right? Like I think having another card, this is kind of like a Dark Ruler No More, but upgraded, right? This is like an upgraded Dark Ruler No More for more modern standards. Like this is a card that's actually meant to counter combo decks, and it only counters combo decks, right? It doesn't counter mid-range. It doesn't counter, you know, the decks that don't spam the board. This is basically the dream counter to decks like, I don't know, the Mitsurugi Yami, Vanquish Soul K9, Power Patron Doom Z, Power Patron Archmage, like all the slop decks basically, right? It's just all the slop decks that this counters. And if this card forces people in the future, to play lower ceiling combos, end on only 4 face-up cards instead of like 10, that's fine. I think that's fine. I think if you were facing off against Elf Notes, and instead of making the full board, they end on 4 cards, like 4 face-up cards only, that's a win already. Because that's gonna make the card, you know, that's gonna make the card pretty good and impactful on the game if it sees play. Right? Well, it's going to be format dependent. In some formats, it's going to be good. In some formats, it's not going to be. But ultimately, I think this is a very, very interesting design. I would go out on a limb here and say they could have made it better to make sure it sees play. Because this is the type of card. Trust me, this is the type of card that if it sees play, it's good for the game. This card is good for the game if it sees play. From my perspective, because this punishes combo decks heavy, very, very heavily. This card is so bad into Cool Tune, I think you have to wait until later to play it. I mean, all that means is that you're not going to main deck it, because it's not good against some decks in the format. This card sucks against Cool Tune, it sucks against Branded, it sucks against Sky Striker. Like, it's just not a good card in the main deck. But realistically, the way this card is worded, it would never have been a main deck card, because it's so bad going first. It is so bad going first. Like, the only scenario in which this card is actually good going first is if your opponent walks into it by randomly attacking over something, or when your opponent actually has monster effects that destroy cards that they can't chain block. Then it's good going first. If this resolves versus a combo deck, you just auto win. No, yeah, good. That's good. I mean, I'm fine with that. I think combo decks are, like, modern era combo decks are the worst thing about modern Yu-Gi-Oh. That's my opinion. I know that I'm not alone with this, but I'm also not everyone agrees with me on that. But I personally think that the all-out combo decks are the worst thing about modern Yu-Gi-Oh. That is how I feel about it. And I also think it's a very weak argument to say, like, oh, the combo decks are auto losing, when literally Like, who in their right mind feels bad with a combo player auto losing the game when all they're trying to do is auto win the game going first? Like, come on, dude. Like, what are we talking about here? Are we saying that auto winning is bad? Sure, then get rid of all of these combo decks first. Also, you can't kill. Yeah, you cannot kill. You cannot even attack until the end of the next turn. So all that it means is that you're gonna have to play for follow-up. Like, combo players in shambles when they have to consider turn 3 or what? Like, come on, dude. What are we doing here? Oh, this card is cool. I like it. You can kill over monsters? Well, okay, yeah, it says cannot attack directly. Sure. But they're not gonna have any monsters. It also, and this is also worth pointing out, it only negates all face-up cards and only destroys those cards that it successfully negates. It does not destroy the cards it doesn't negate. So you're keeping face downs, you're keeping your non-engine, we're not destroying unaffected cards. You know, there are downsides here if the translation is correct. So yeah. Also, it says this card's activation and effect cannot be negated. It does not say that it can't be responded to. So you can still do things like tag out with SP Little Knight. You can still do things like IP Masquerena, link into something that then cannot be destroyed. You can respond to it. You just can't negate it. I feel like this card is too weak. I don't know. I'm like, I think it's too early to say that. I really think it's too early to say that because we don't know exactly when this card is going to come out. We don't know what the format is going to look like. We don't know what the environment for the game is going to be when we get this card. I share your concerns. Like, I love the idea of this card. I love the idea of this card, and I really hope it's good. I really hope it's something that you can reasonably side to deal with the combo slop in the format. Because right now, like, literally the literal only thing that we have to deal with combo slop in the format is Molchami Fualos, which usually gets negated, and we have something like Jolin Lockbird, which is a toxic card that I want out of the game. So, like, the tools at dealing with combo decks at the moment are very limited in Yu-Gi-Oh, unfortunately, at the moment. Like, we have stuff like, we have board breakers, but funnily enough, the board breakers are usually the ones that are good against like the mid-range decks in the format, like a Forbidden Droplet. Like, try beating an Amorphage Lock with Droplet, or try beating a Secret Village with Droplet, or whatever. Like, all these things that combo decks do these days. Like, you know, the board breakers usually aren't even good enough against it because usually the board breakers are outdated. We haven't gotten an appropriately like powered board breaker in a long time, and this could be that. So I actually do think that this card is needed in the game right now, because at the moment, like, what are your options if you're trying to deal with like a super high power level combo deck in the format? You can hand trap them to death, which is cringe. No one wants to try and do that because usually the decks are built to be good against that. And like, it doesn't feel like you're playing a skillful game of Yu-Gi-Oh. You can use a Molcharmi, which if it resolves is good for you. It forces them to make a half board, and then, but usually they have Called By, they have Ash Blossoms, they have Crossouts, they side in other stuff, you know, like it's weird. And then Jolin Lockbird, basically, which most decks are even good under Jolin Lockbird now, and the card is cringe and should go away. And the other option is board breakers, and the board breakers just don't cut it against the combo decks anymore. YGORG translation. Okay, let's check if it's the same. Okay, it's a different name here. It's called Mind Mirror Force. If your opponent controls 5 or more face-up cards, this card's activation and effect cannot be negated. Also, it can be activated the turn it was set. Okay, the wording is a little cleaner here. At any of the following timings, negate the effects of as many face-up cards your opponent controls as possible, and if you do, destroy them. Your monsters cannot attack directly until the end of the next turn after this card resolves. When the opponent's monster with the highest attack attacks, when your opponent activates a monster effect that would destroy a card on the field, or when your opponent activates a monster effect in the hand or field during your turn. Okay, yeah, I mean, yeah. Mirror Force is searchable. I mean, okay, yeah, if it's actually called Mirror Force, I guess there are some cards that could search it. I don't know if that really matters, though. I really don't know if that matters. Yeah. I'm trying to wrap my head around it. I'm trying to wrap my head around whether this card is good enough, actually. To be what I want it to be. But I think it's a good attempt. I think it's a good attempt at doing what I want it to do. Because I think in theory, what this card is trying to do is something I vibe with heavily. Because it's trying to punish overextension, right? It's not trying to punish people who are making mid-rangey boards. It's trying to specifically target overextension, which I think is good. That is very, very good. 5 face-up cards is a lot. There is play around potential for that. But I think if my opponent specifically ends on 4 face-up cards, makes a weaker board because this card exists, I think the card has already done its job. I think that's fine. Yeah. No, I like it, and I really hope it's good enough. I really hope it can see play. Not gonna lie, it could be 4. I mean, you do have to be a little bit careful because you don't want this card to be like an auto win going second against every single deck in the format, right? You do need to be careful with this sort of thing, right? Like the harder the punish, the more heavy the restriction does need to be, I think, on this. Because you don't want to be like playing against a mid-range deck that ends on like 3-4 cards and then immediately be able to blow them out completely. 5 is perfect. I guess we're gonna have to see. Ruling questions. Do quick play spells that are designated to be sent to the grave after activation count as face-up cards here? So they could also fulfill 5 face-up cards condition and could also be negated by this card. Yes. A quick play spell on the field does count as a face-up card. So for example, let's try to find a good example for this. Let's say I don't know, let's say I'm playing Cool Tune and I'm going second against Draco Tail, and the Draco Tail player ends on 4 face-up monsters to play around this card. And let's say I activate Synchro Overtake and they chain Draco Tail Flame. At the moment, they have 5 face-up cards. They have 5 face-up cards because the Draco Tail Flame is the 5th one. Let's say at that point, I chain Fallen and the Virtuous, targeting their Ecclesia Synchro that they got back in the end phase. And then they chain it to tag out. Then I can use Mind Mirror Force to destroy all the face-up cards. I can chain Mind Mirror Force to negate the Draco Tail Flame as well and all the other cards. And destroy them. Does Flame work here because the destruction is optional? Flame, first of all, okay, there's so much wrong with this. Flame doesn't destroy. And this card can't even respond to trap cards. It's not about the flame. You're not responding to the flame. You're responding to a monster effect in hand or field. That's why I'm saying like you chain something else and that forces a monster effect. You can never respond to trap cards with this. But the question, I know what you're asking still, because this card has different wordings depending on where we look for the translation, right? Because here it says when your opponent activates a monster effect that includes an effect to destroy a card on the field. And here it says when your opponent activates a monster effect that would destroy a card on the field. An example here is Urgula, for example. If your opponent activates an Urgula in the graveyard, can you activate this card or not? That depends on the exact wording. With this wording, you wouldn't be able to because the destruction on Urgula is optional. In this wording, you would be able to. So this is something I cannot tell you because I can't read Japanese. I don't know what the correct translation is. We're gonna have to wait and see for the specifics of this on whether it's going to be able to negate or respond to cards that are optional destruction. Okay, one more ruling question. If the opponent has 5 face-up cards on activation of this card and 4 face-up cards on resolution of this card, can this card still not be negated? Oh, that's a good question. That is a good question. Because let's say... what's a good example of this? let's say my opponent, let's just use a hypothetical example here to explain it. Let's say Baron the Fleur is on the field. It's just the first Omni Negate I can think of. Let's say you activate Might Mirror Force, they chain Baron the Fleur on it, and then they chain Phimena in hand, which will put them down to less cards because they're fusing away their board. Can they still negate it? I mean, it's the way it's worded, I would think it can be negated in this case. The way it's worded, I would think it can be negated. But it's, once again, it's something that I was expecting this, because if is a weird thing to put here, I guess. If your opponent controls 5 or more face-up cards, this card activation and effect cannot be negated. Also, it can be activated the turn was set. For me, once it's activated, you can't negate it. Yeah, but like, it's not a for me thing. It's not, this is not subjective. It's not, you can say, for me, it's like that. Doesn't work like that with rulings in Yu-Gi-Oh! The unfortunate truth is I'm not going to be able to give you an answer on it right now, because I think we have to wait for the exact wording when this card comes out. Or like, because even YG Organization has had translation problems in the past sometimes. An if can turn into a when. When your opponent activates a monster effect that would destroy can change to that includes an effect to destroy. That's not guaranteed. Always take it with a grain of salt. And the realistic answer is this is something that I don't know if we even have a precedence for this. But if this card says, for example, while your opponent controls 5 or more face-up cards, this card's activation and effect cannot be negated. I think you can still attempt to negate it. That we agree on, right? Because just because a card says it can't be negated, you can still attempt to, right? You can still attempt to use a card that would negate it, even if the card is going to be immune to it. So you can attempt to chain Baron to it, right? It's like when a card is unaffected, you can still try to negate it, and then you can chain something else that makes it lose its unaffected status, and then it can be negated. That can happen, right? I'm not sure. What's an example of that? Like if what's a card that's only sometimes unaffected? Like while something else is the case. Dragon that devours the dogma. Yes, Dragon that devours the dogma is a good example because that's currently being used, right? Currently, you have an Ecclesia in the graveyard. So the Dragon that devours the dogma is 3,500 and unaffected. Your opponent goes, I don't know, activate Widow Anchor on it. They can do that. You say okay to it. And then they chain Shark Cannon to banish your Ecclesia. That does work, right? The chain resolves backwards. The Shark Cannon banishes the Ecclesia. And then the dogma loses its unaffected status. And then you can negate and take it. So this card could work in a similar way to the point where it's only immune to negation while your opponent has 5 or more face-up cards. So if they have a way to reduce their board down, they might be able to stop it. Here's the thing though, even if that is the case, and remember this is hypothetical because we don't know exactly how this card is going to work because we need confirmation on that. Even if that is the case, that only means that your opponent needs to still respect it and play around it and still lose potentially a lot of cards if you use it, right? Let's say you activate it and your opponent literally has to waste a negate on it and they have to reduce the cards on their board. So they have to like waste, in the example I gave you earlier, they have to waste the Baron, they have to waste the Phimena, and they have to fuse a couple of cards away from their board to reduce the number of cards down. Still not a bad card in that example, right? But we still need to know, we still need to wait until we can see exactly how the card works. Okay, long story short, I think this card is very interesting. I love the idea behind it. Personally, I'm crossing my fingers and I'm hoping that the card delivers in practice, because so far all we can do is theory. We can only talk about what this card is supposed to do. The question is it actually going to do this? Is it actually going to be used as a counter to combo decks? Is it going to force combo players to play in different ways? That is something that's up for debate. We're going to have to wait and see for that. I don't know. But it does have potential, I think. It does have potential, but it is really, really hard to evaluate. It really depends on the decks in the format. It really depends on a lot of different things. But I think this card existing is going to be good because at any point, if there's a format where a certain combo deck just pops up out of nowhere that ends on a crazy board that you can't beat, maybe this is a side deck option for you in the future. At the very minimum, it's going to be that. So I think it's a sick design. One of my favorite things out there is the cards that play mind games with your opponent, even if you don't have them, like Nibiru. I think those cards are the best examples of designing cards meant to counter combo decks when your opponent have to respect them even if you don't even draw them. I think those are the best designed anti-combo cards in the game, and this could be the next good example of this. So I'm really happy they're attempting to make a card like this at least. Whether it's going to be successful or not, we're going to have to wait and see, but I'm really happy they're trying.